They say the Winchester Mystery House was never meant to be finished, because finishing it would mean death. Hallways that lead nowhere, doors that open into walls, stairs that rise and collapse into nothing every inch, built to confuse something that refuses to stay buried. I learned too late that the spirits inside are not lost. They are waiting. Watch this video to the end, subscribe, and like, because what happened inside that house still follows me. It may already be listening to you. I arrived in San Jose just after sunset. The sky bruised purple and gray, the kind of evening where sound seems to die before it reaches your ears. The Winchester Mystery House stood at the end of the street like a crouching animal, its windows dark, its shape wronged. Too many angles, too many roofs, too many shadows overlapping one another. Even from outside the gate, I felt watched, as if the house was aware I had finally come alone. The tour guides were gone for the night. I had arranged special access under the pretense of historical research, but the truth was simpler. I needed to see it without witnesses. The iron gate groaned when I pushed it open, the sound echoing far too long across the empty courtyard. My footsteps felt muffled, swallowed by the ground, while the house loomed larger with every step, its many windows reflecting nothing but darkness. Inside, the air was colder than expected, thick with the smell of old wood and dust. The door closed behind me on its own. Softly, deliberately, I did not touch it. The silence inside was not empty, it felt occupied, layered, as though whispers were stacked on top of one another, just beyond hearing. I turned on my flashlight, the beam trembling across ornate wallpaper and narrow corridors that bent at unnatural angles. Sarah Winchester built this place to confuse the spirits of those killed by Winchester rifles. Or, so the legend goes. Night after night, she constructed new rooms to appease the dead, guided by voices no one else could hear. As I walked deeper into the house, I realized the stories left something out. These halls were not designed to confuse ghosts. They were designed to contain them. A sudden chill crawled up my spine as I passed a mirror. For a brief moment, my reflection lagged behind, my face still staring forward even as I stepped away. I stopped, breathing. When I turned back, the reflection snapped into place, but something else stood behind me in the glass. Tall, pale, still. I spun around. The hallway was empty. The floor creaked above me, 10 Basidima, 10 B and Dima, as if something was pacing, testing my position. The flashlight flickered, and in that split second of darkness, I heard it clearly, a breath that was not my own, slow and deliberate, brushing against my ear. I realized then that the house did not want me lost. It wanted me found. I moved forward because standing still felt worse, like remaining in one place would allow whatever followed me to grow closer. The corridor narrowed, the walls pressing inward until my shoulders brushed the patterned wallpaper. The design seemed to shift when I wasn't looking directly at them, curling into shapes that resembled faces frozen in silent screams. My flashlight caught on a door at the end of the hall, its handle worn, smooth as if countless hands had twisted it over the years. When I opened it, the room beyond made no sense. A staircase climbed halfway up the wall, ending abruptly beneath the ceiling. Another door stood at the top, unreachable. I had seen pictures of these architectural dead ends before, but standing inside one was different. The air vibrated faintly, like the low hum of distant machinery or chanting. I felt a pressure behind my eyes, as though something was urging me to look up. I did, and regretted it instantly. A figure stood on the staircase, its feet inches from the drop. It wore old-fashioned clothing, the fabric hanging loose over a frame that looked wrong, stretched too thin. Its face was partially obscured, but I could see enough, hollow eyes reflecting the beam of my flashlight, mouth opened slightly, as if caught mid-word. The figure did not move, it did not breathe, yet I knew, with absolute certainty, that it was aware of me. I stepped back, my heels striking the wall. The sound seemed to break something. The figure tilted its head, slowly, the bones in its neck cracking like dry wood. Its mouth widened, stretching far beyond what should be possible, and a sound poured out, not a scream, but many voices layered together, overlapping in agony and rage. I ran. The house unfolded around me like a nightmare rearranging itself. Doors I hadn't seen before appeared where walls had been. Hallways stretched longer than they should have, their angles subtly changing as I moved. I could hear footsteps now, bare feet slapping softly against wood, always just out of sight. Shadows slipped across the corners of my vision. Too tall, too thin, bending in ways no human body could. I burst into a ballroom, the famous, unfinished one, its polished floor ending suddenly where construction had stopped. The windows were sealed shut, dust thick on the glass. My breath came in ragged gasps as I turned in a slow circle. At first, the room seemed empty. Then the shadows detached themselves from the walls. They gathered near the far end of the room, condensing, taking shape. Faces emerged, men, women, even children, each bearing wounds I didn't want to look at for too long. Bullet holes, torn flesh, missing eyes. Their expressions were not furious. They were bleeding. One stepped forward, her dress soaked dark at the chest. Her eyes met mine, and I felt a sudden wave of sorrow so intense it nearly dropped me to my knees. Her lips moved, forming words I could not hear. Behind her, more figures pressed closer, their forms flickering, unstable, as if they were struggling to remain visible. The temperature plunged. Frost spread across the windows in branching patterns. The spirits began to whisper, their voices overlapping into a deafening chorus. I caught fragments, names, dates, places, each one a life cut short. At the center of the mass, something else stirred, something larger, older. The floorboards beneath me creaked, and I understood the terrible truth. These ghosts were not trapped here by the house. They were hiding. The whispers rose into screams as the presence behind them made itself known. The spirits recoiled, shrinking back toward the walls, their faces twisting in fear that eclipsed even their suffering. The lights in the ballroom dimmed, my flashlight flickering violently until it went out entirely. In the darkness, I felt the floor vibrate with slow, deliberate footsteps. A shape emerged at the far end of the room, taller than the others, its outline wavering like heat over asphalt. As it moved closer, the air thickened, pressing against my chest until every breath felt like a struggle. Its form was vaguely human, but distorted limbs too long, joints bending the wrong way, its head tilted at an unnatural angle. Where its face should have been, there was only a void, swallowing the faint light that tried to touch it. This was the reason for the house. Not the restless dead, but the thing that hunted them. I stumbled backward, my hands brushing the cold wall. The spirits vanished one by one, dissolving into shadows that sank into the wood and plaster. I was alone with it now. The thing paused, as if savoring the moment, then tilted its head toward me. A sound poured from the void where its mouth should have been like wind, rushing through a tunnel lined with whispers. Images flooded my mind without warning. Battlefields, blood-soaked streets, homes shattered by gunfire. I saw through the eyes of the dead, felt the moment their lives were torn away. The pain was overwhelming, crushing, and threaded through it all was the presence standing before me, feeding on it, growing stronger with every death it claimed. Sarah Winchester had built this place, not to appease spirits, but to cage a predator. The thing lunged. I dropped to the floor as it passed over me, the air screaming where it moved. The wall behind me cracked, splintering outward as if struck by an invisible force. I scrambled to my feet and ran again, guided by pure instinct. The house seemed to respond, corridors shifting to open paths ahead of me, as though it wanted me to escape. I burst through a narrow door and found myself in a small bedroom. The windows rattled violently, the walls groaning under unseen pressure. The temperature dropped so suddenly that my breath fogged in front of me. In the corner, a figure sat hunched on the floor, an elderly woman in a black mourning dress, her face hidden by her hair. Sarah Winchester. She looked up slowly, her eyes clouded but sharp with purpose. She did not seem surprised to see me. She raised a trembling hand and pointed to the ceiling. Above us, I could hear it moving, circling, enraged. The walls shook as it struck them again and again. This house is a lock, she whispered, her voice thin but steady, and it knows its keeper. The door behind me slammed. Symbols carved into the walls began to glow faintly, lines and shapes etched into the wood itself. The house was responding not to me, but to her. Sarah pushed herself to her feet, standing straighter than I thought possible.
You don't belong here, she said. Not to me.
But to the thing above us. The ceiling split open, blackness poured down like smoke, and the room filled with a deafening roar. Sarah stepped forward, placing herself between me and the descending shadow. Her expression was calm, resolute. "This ends now." The shadow struck with a force that threw me against the wall, knocking the air from my lungs. I slid to the floor as the room erupted in chaos wood, splintering, glass shattering, symbols flaring brightly before burning out. Through the haze of dust and darkness, I saw Sarah Winchester standing impossibly firm, her form glowing faintly as if illuminated from within, the thing wrapped around her like a storm, its whispers turning shrill, desperate. The house groaned in response, every beam and nail vibrating in protest. I realized then that Sarah had never truly left this place. She had become part of it, its warden, its final defense. The spirits were not just hiding here, they were guarded. With a sound like a thunderclap, the shadow was pulled upward, dragged back through the layer in the ceiling. The house seemed to inhale, then exhale, sealing the breach with a final, shuddering creak. The oppressive weight vanished. The air warmed. The silence that followed was profound, almost reverent. Sarah turned to me. For the first time, she smiled not with joy, but with relief. "It will sleep again," she said softly, "but only as long as the house stands." Her form began to fade, edges blurring, dissolving into the walls themselves. The symbols dimmed and vanished. The room settled, broken but intact, as if nothing extraordinary had happened at all. When I finally found the strength to stand, I was alone. I don't remember how I found my way out. The halls no longer twisted or shifted. The doors opened where they should. The house felt tired. As I stepped outside, dawn was breaking, pale light spilling over the rooftops. The Winchester Mystery House stood silent behind me, its windows dark and unreadable. I told no one what I saw. Who would believe me? The official stories remain eccentric architecture, superstition, madness. Tourists still walk those halls, laughing nervously, snapping photos of staircases to nowhere. They feel the chill, they sense the eyes on them, but they never see the truth. Sometimes, late at night, I dream of the house. In those dreams, the halls are longer, the shadows deeper. I hear whispers pressing against the walls, testing them, and beneath it all, a monster is impatient, hungry, waiting for the day the lock finally breaks. The Winchester Mystery House is not a monument to fear. It is a warning, and if it ever falls, there's nothing left to stop what waits inside.